Okay, they're really good.
Oh, I'm on mute. There we go. Hi.
Hey.
There she is. Hey, Morgan.
Hey, I'm
You're
here.
on the road.
I gotta go back.
Okay, so looks like it's recorded.
All right.
So interesting week, but let me see if I can pull up my Google Docs real fast.
How are you feeling, Taylor?
Physically, I'm good.
Good.
Emotionally,
I know. It's yep.
Okay. All righty, here we go. Okay. Chapter 7, right?
Yes.
War, terrorism, justice,
Mhm.
freedom. So let's see. You just want to take it like little, like we did last time,
Yes.
in that section.
Yeah, I think that works well to make
Mhm.
sure we address everything that was in that chapter. So,
Yes. I agree. Okay.
The quote at the very beginning. I know that you are smart and I know that you think you're doing what's best for me. But if freedom is handled just your way, then it's not my freedom or free.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good.
Yeah, that is really good.
Okay.
yeah.
Kind of makes you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Well, this is
Because
how
to
we always
us,
do it.
yeah, because to us, freedom means something different compared to, those that may not have freedom or, so we may think that what we want to do or what we're trying to do for them is what's best, but honestly, you know, that may not be what's best for them, like like it's saying.
Mhm.
That's right.
The way that we go about giving them freedom or getting them to freedom, may not be the best for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it says here to look at war through the eyes of people whose entire families and communities have been erased, or through the eyes of women and children who have been killed, raped, and you find the definition for terrorism of war. We may see war, terrorism, justice, and freedom as something totally different than someone who's experienced those things. We think we can understand, we think we can relate on some type of a level, but ultimately it's kind of hard.
Mhm. The last sentence of that first paragraph is all about perception. That, on one side of the border, the person, thinks that they're being brave and doing something to stand up for their community or whatever. And then on the other side, it's looked at as being a terrorist, as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something that I took from it is that, no matter what war, whatever we're fighting for in the war, it says, we're slaughtering of the innocent. We may not think of it that way, depending on, what side of, I guess, what side of what am I trying to think of? The war that we're on. But, at the end of the day, people are getting killed.
No matter what side we're on.
Innocent people are being,
Not matter.
yeah, no matter what side we're on. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that was good. No matter what side we're on.
Mhm. Going into the next section,
Yep.
where it says the term just war contains an eternal contradiction because war is inevitable, indiscriminate, innocent people are killed. In fact, the politicians admit it. They say, well, yes, innocent people will be killed, but it is too bad. This is what the terrorists say. That's what Timothy McVeigh said.
Mhm.
It's like, too bad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Down here it says, although wars have been fought for various reasons, what is different now is that terrorism has become a form of war and we are living it. So,
Mm.
you know, war and terrorism are undeniably connected.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, what a section. What a chapter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess since we're on that section, right? Because we're on y'all are looking at the historical perspective of them, like
Yes.
the meanings of them. Yeah. Because like, I guess in that first paragraph, and y'all may have mentioned this, I don't know. War is always given if we think of the historical perspective of it, it's given an optimistic connotation.
Mhm.
And that, the killing and the bombing and the terrorism are all justified.
Right.
And I guess just like reading the refugees book, it kind of like changed my whole perspective on war and refugees and freedom. And I don't know, just thinking about just what I've highlighted here, yeah, what we learn about war and what is perceived to us through like textbooks and social studies, the studies that we go through in school, like there's always a optimistic viewpoint of it. There's always a valid reason as to why we're going to war. It's always justified. But it's like, we don't get that other side of the story, or we don't get the other effects of how it or I'm losing my thoughts, but how it affected the other people,
Yeah.
in that other country.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, because, at the end of the day, there's always going to be the innocent, regardless of what war you're fighting.
Yeah.
That are gonna, be caught in the mix of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Everybody's impacted somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Making meaning a current perspective. Move on to that one if y'all want to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess with this one, the most relatable event that occurred would be, September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we talk about Pearl Harbor and even the Oklahoma City bombing too.
Yeah.
They had a reason behind what they did, whether it was driven by a racial prejudice or religion. They thought that what they were doing was right, and those, the ones that you mentioned, Morgan, are what's most current for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the things that, are taught in the classroom for sure. And I feel like when we teach those things or when we learn about it, it's not, I know it's for children, you don't want to make it super gory and graphic, but it's almost downplayed a little bit, like
yes,
it's not they don't make it as severe as it was.
Right. Well, one of the videos that we had was for the coloring book, We Shall Never Forget. And it's I say it's graphic, and it's showing a gun being pointed and, the real things that happen, but it's targeted for kids 5 and up, for them to color in, the final movements of bin Laden. And, so then there's controversy around that, and that it is a disservice to young people because they think that all Muslims are like this.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, it's a coloring book, so it's in black and white. There is no, You know, if you want to stretch that, there's no gray area for them to say not everybody is like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I remember it talking about it in the book too, you know, to where like you were just mentioning, like all Muslims are terrorists. Um, just they have that negative connotation to them just because
Mhm.
you know, of these individuals who have made
Yeah.
impactful, you know, choices. Um, but yeah, it does talk about that in the
Mm-hmm.
chapter later on somewhere.
Yeah.
Or biased against them because
Yeah.
can't even control, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The
Yeah.
next one, making meaning in critical connections. It's a little small.
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant to come back to this section because I wrote down what is freedom to me. Like if I were to be asked, how would I define that?
Mhm.
And that's just something I need to give more thought to because it's definitely something I take for granted, you know,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
because I follow the rules. You know,
Right.
so as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, then I can maintain my status quo and
Mhm.
as long as I operate within that. So I
It's
do
like,
want to talk about that.
like, you know, one person may see freedom as this way, and another person may see freedom as this way, and your view of freedom may not even look like freedom.
Mhm, right. I know, because thinking how I just described it, it's like you're following rules. Are you really free? Like, well, you're free to make your own choices within this little bitty area.
Yeah.
Like with your kids, like, do you want peanut butter and jelly or do you want chicken nuggets? Well, I
Yeah.
don't want that. Those are your options.
Yeah.
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 Free to choose one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're free to choose one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I read this section, I was like, it really made me think too, because it's like, man, I don't even really know I don't say perfect, but I feel like I don't really know a satisfying definition for those terms that, you know, they had asked these, what
Yeah.
was it?
Teachers.
Teachers. Yeah, the teachers. You know, could you define them? And like on the spot, could you be able to tell me a definition of those? It's like you said, I would need to take some time
Uh-huh.
to think about them and really like, okay, what does this really mean to me? But also, what does it not just mean to me, but what does it mean to other people as well?
Mhm.
Um, but it's like, yeah, I feel like I guess because we have these things, we have freedom and justice, you know, it's easier for us to just kind of take it for granted versus those that may not have it, they're going to completely see, you know, these terms differently, like we were just talking about. And so
Exactly.
it
Everybody's
would be really, yeah, and when we like get to this in school, you know, having them come up, okay, well, what do you think freedom means? Especially like the older kids, probably not first graders or second graders, but you know, definitely middle schoolers, fifth graders, you know, having them, okay, well, what is freedom? You know,
Mm.
what is justice? What is war? What is terrorism? You know, and I think that would be quite interesting to do like the same thing that they did here in this study, you know, compile all of those, um, you know, their meanings together
Mhm.
and then you know really get a good idea of what everyone thinks of all of those terms.
Right.
Mhm. Yep. In the last paragraph of the justice section,
Mm-hmm.
one of the teachers realized that justice evolves through the agreed upon rules a society makes and is very subjective, and that not everyone in the society may agree to the rules, but they all have to follow them for the larger good of the group. And
Mm-hmm.
I know so many times the kids are like, I don't understand why we can't wear hats. And I was like, well, somebody along the way before you did something, and now the rule is you can't wear hats in school. You know, it's like, so it's not you. And they're like, but I won't do that. I'm like, right. But if we let you do one thing, but then the person that can't responsibly do that, then we have to tell them that they can't. So now it's just a blanket rule that everybody can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
Mm-hmm.
having to
Yeah.
explain that to them on everything because they want to challenge it all. This is an injustice, girls, why can't I wear a midriff? The boys shouldn't be looking at me like that. And I'm like, well, honey, you're like prancing around to go sharpen your pencil every 5 minutes and like over in front of them. So you're bringing on the attention. And that is why
Yes.
you gotta put your jacket back on. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
justice can only result from knowledge and understanding of all viewpoints. Yeah. Mhm.
Some put it very simply as fairness, a God-given right, security, honesty, and so on.
Yeah.
Straight to the point.
Yep.
Nope.
Okay, so we talked about
And it's like all of them were different, you know?
Mhm.
freedom. It said it was interesting to note the language used in the teacher's attempt to define freedom. Words like allow or permission or given indicate that some of them believe that freedom cannot be taken for granted. So
Hmm.
that's that's true. I mean, but freedom can be taken for granted, obviously. If it's taken away, you won't
Mhm.
have it. But then again, if freedom can be taken away, are you truly free?
Right.
So,
That's a good point.
Rules. Yeah. Right, because then you think about, the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and, all of that. But it's not always.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right, war and terrorism. That's the last little section under that one.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Let's see.
I highlighted last sentence of the first paragraph. War is needed for ideas to be challenged. Everyone in society has different perceptions of what they deem to be correct.
Yep.
And I had noted on here, I think it was another video we had to watch, where it was a panel of authors and somebody was bringing up, or they would discuss books that were controversial. And one author on there, her name's Nikki Walker, and she wrote, "Why do we fight? Conflict, war, and peace." And so I just noted that on here, that might actually be a good book to check out because it's like 80 pages. Just to have in the classroom. Because I guess there are, and it goes back to being, which side of the border are you on? Because there are things that you should fight, and there's things that you just need to leave alone, or, that you don't need to challenge.
Right.
Yeah. And I kind of highlighted kind of how, and I think it talks about it previously too, kind of how war and terrorism are similar. Um, where the reasons for war are power, control, religion, government, hatred, and anger, but also for terrorism, the reasons for terrorism often are because of power, domination, religion, beliefs, and other opinions. So, both they are very similar, even though they may be viewed separately. They, have a lot of similarities between both of them, war and terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it said that when they did the survey, 10 out of the 22 teachers came to the conclusion that war and terrorism are similar. So,
Mm-hmm.
about half of people agreed to that.
It's one thing to like protest something that you don't agree with. It's another thing to go in and cause mass destruction.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on to the next part is using children's books to address war, terrorism, justice, and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Although it's difficult to describe how teachers should use these wonderful books in detail, as context of each classroom is different, there are some basic principles that teachers can use. So I like how they gave us the basic principles because they agree that okay, not every classroom's the same, not every classroom need the same type of book to cover these concepts, but here are some basic guidelines and rules to kind of follow.
Yeah.
yeah, I highlighted those too.
Mm-hmm.
Just some quick things to like make yourself a checklist. Does
Right.
this do this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Might be a good thing to kind of to think about, like, do I have these things in my library? Do I have books that are relevant to these things in my library? And if not, kind of like you're doing, Aaliyah, like, I need to get this, or I need to try to rent, check them out of the library or whatever.
Mhm.
Because I mean, if not, I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
no idea what's in that library. I don't know. I haven't seen it in years. Like,
Right.
kids just pick something off the bookshelf and I don't know. So
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love these principles that they've provided. Some of them, yes, it's a checklist for the teacher as far as selecting the book, but then it also goes into kind of lesson planning for you. So you're set the context, time period, situation. So you're, activating some prior knowledge for them because they understand a timeline and they know what, time periods are, at least some of the older kids. Or you can make connections with them for things that
Yeah.
they've seen, and then letting them naturally react, but then being prepared for redirection with some of the content,
Yeah.
and then the discussion tools, and then making intertextual connections, which may not be right then in that lesson. It may be later on in the year when you cover something else and you'll say, what else have we learned about this year that this, connects to? And then somebody will remember something and you're like, good job. That is it. What was similar and what was different. So that's, all of that. And
Yeah.
then narrative, you can, have them, how would you have handled things if you were there? Add yourself to the story.
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something like, especially for me, I like you were talking about, I think it's the third bullet, allowing the students to react in any way. Because I feel like often we kind of, I don't want to say shelter them, but have parameters on kind of the direction we want the kids to go and how they should be reacting. And basically in this type of instance, they're like, no, let them respond to it honestly, let them show their reactions of it and their interest. And yeah, it may go far left field, but just bring it back in to the main focus of what you're really trying to hone in on. But then again, when we do that, I feel like if we allow our students to react, how they want to, they're going to become more invested
Yeah.
in this, in the history and what happened and the effects of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just allowing that discussion opportunity to happen. I think that adds a lot of value into them comprehending and understanding these issues, because a majority of our students have not experienced, war, terrorism, things like that. So that would give them that opportunity to do so.
I was just thinking with, allowing the students to react in any way. For those that maybe do have a strong reaction, even if it goes far left, to ask them, well, what senses were activated in your reaction? Was it something that you visualized? Could you imagine what you would have heard or smelled? And just to get the other kids thinking too, because, tell you, as they get older, they forget they have senses, whether it's common or the 5 senses, they forget.
I really liked under the past depictions. Let's
Uh-huh.
see.
Mm-hmm.
Although horrors of war and terrorism are depicted in some picture books and described in others, the focus as it should be, they basically what it's saying is the books for children are or should be more focused on courage and bravery, these children's books, instead of like the gore and the killing. And it should be focused on those that are brave and that are the heroes of the story. So I thought it was kind of a good perspective when you're thinking about, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to put all these terrible things in my classroom, but it doesn't have to be that. You don't have to focus on the terrible part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, because yeah, like it says in the first sentence, the historical perspective of war are usually the heroic um depictions, like you were saying, that are going to show bravery and courage
Yeah.
um in these children's book versus the graphic glory, gore and blood and all that stuff. You're not going to see that often in children's literature.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. And it says children's books about these times, so colonial war, civil war, world wars, and so on, are tales of heroism and resilience, usually told from the viewpoint of a child. And so they're kind of able to get that lens and not trying to understand it from, a 50-year-old soldier.
That can definitely help them to relate more, I feel like.
Mhm.
You know, like kind of put themselves in that character's shoes, especially
Mhm.
if they're around the same age. Like, oh, think about, they're your age or you were their age, when this happened. Think about how you would feel if this happened to you at this point in your life. Okay, so
Oh, sorry, that made me think of, I know this is supposed to be on books, but videos. Liberty Kids is one that tells historical events from the perspective of these, modern kids that go back in time. So that's just one to kind of give them a visualization of what was happening there, but it's as a cartoon, it's not super realistic.
yeah,
It's another way to get information in them.
it's a good resource.
Yeah.
And they've given us a lot of books, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I've actually done on the bottom of 160, it says Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl.
Mhm.
I've used that one. It's much shorter than reading the play,
Right.
but gets the point across.
That's probably neat. All right. Current depictions. Mhm.
Perspective of war has changed. In the US, wars are being fought in the name of keepers of justice and democracy. A former CIA counterterrorism specialist characterized as preemptive war. The Vietnam, Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, and the war against terrorism in Iraq were all started as the United States and the Western world took it upon themselves to be the supreme powers to help fight against oppression in the rest of the world. So, these were all fought under a disagreement, even among the leaders and the international community. And now teachers were left to try to help our kids understand, why did the US decide to stick their nose in other countries' business and try to fix
Join in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at that last line. As teachers and educators, we're left to help our children comprehend these issues critically and sensitively. So you were kind of left with it, aren't we?
Yep. What's up? What do you think about that? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about comma splicing.
Let's talk about something I do know.
The next one, reading authentic accounts. It says one of the biggest dilemmas of teaching about war and terrorism is how how to convey the horrors of these without creating a picture that's like the gore and the thing we talked about earlier. Like, how do I explain this to these children without scaring the life out of them?
Right.
Without like having them like have nightmares. But
Yeah.
I think this chapter's done a really good job of giving us some ways. And like that video you were talking about, there's also lots of resources out there to give it in a softer way.
Yes. Yeah, that's what the next section says, is that certain genres of children's literature have been particularly developed to accommodate and serve the purpose of facilitating tough issues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, 163. So like the historical fiction, autobiographies, first person accounts. I think that's what, oh yeah, what we talked about in the previous chapters, the value of having those authentic accounts, authentic literature pieces so that students can really understand and connect to that time period, but also not to, like you're saying, get to like the really graphic parts of it.
Mhm.
But it gives them an opportunity to connect with the characters or the people that were living during that time and experiencing those type of circumstances or issues.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Next section, finding resilience in the face of adversity.
Yes, finding the human goodwill, perseverance of it.
Mhm.
And then it goes back to what we were just saying a couple sections ago, that we need to find the heroic, the bravery, the courageous.
Yes, we need to focus
Yeah.
on
Mhm.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, I've read, several stories, from 3rd through 8th grade where, they're focusing on, maybe sports, where there was a big change in the sports area. Of course, my brain is drawing a blank on names right now. But like in baseball, and there was a story that we read about a race in the Midwest somewhere, and he wanted to win the race to get money so he could marry his girlfriend. So it's just talking about his passage through that and overcoming his community thinking that he was crazy to do this, that, you're not even a good runner, and he overcame that. So not necessarily war, but it was definitely resisting others not believing in him.
Right. So it looks like this part of the book just continues to give book recommendations and talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we come to the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see.
Oh,
At the
so
heart
then yeah.
at the heart of any war are control, power, and ideological issues, which can also play in terrorism. As teachers and educators, we're left to pick up and make meaning of the carnage that is left behind. Our hopes that exemplary books like the ones mentioned in this chapter make it easier to do so. So, I mean, they're right.
Yeah.
You don't really think about it, but you're like, well, they're just like, here, teach this to these children and do it in a way that doesn't scare the life out of them.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
but it's good
Yeah.
that
Going back to, go ahead.
it's good that it gives those book recommendations,
Mhm.
and those steps to kind of choose a book that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to piggyback like what you're saying with the books they give us, and then those guidelines into picking appropriate books. And all of and whatever we choose, we just need to make sure that we, relate it back to, the courage, the emotional strength, the perseverance of the human, facing those adverse conditions, so that our students can have a glimpse of, the hope and redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree. All right,
Yeah.
let's see. Let's look at the reflection questions really fast. Let's see. If we've answered all of these already.
I think we have. We've been doing really good on that without even previewing them. I mean, I mark them, but I haven't.
What steps can I take to help mediate these difficult terms in my classroom?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to water down what really happened in wars, as to protect our children? And how far would I go? How far would you go to water down the situation in order to protect the children? And I don't think I think if you focus more on the heroic, and make sure it's age appropriate, I think these children will be okay. You know,
Yeah.
as long as we're not like being really super inappropriate and presenting them with
Mm.
content and videos that are not for them. I think
Right.
people have done a really good job of creating resources out there for teachers to be able to make
Mm.
it not necessarily watered down, but make it more appropriate for these kids.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys get the NEA Today magazines? Right. Just you get these.
No,
There's
do
an
those come from the school or those are like some you get shipped to you?
it's National Education Association.
I don't get that.
Okay, well, it had an article in there, this for June. We will not erase history. And I took pictures of it and sent it to Dr. O, because I was like, oh, this is what we were talking about a couple modules ago. But they're talking about, the situation in Florida, where they were trying to get rid of the social studies that covered African American history. And then what teachers can do to protect students' learning. Just making sure that we do what we can within our freedom of teaching to to keep them informed without watering down history or not teaching at all. That was pretty neat. Yeah. Refugee?
All right, let's
I'm gonna
do
go grab one.
Okay, you're good. All righty.
So, of course, I read the book in page order. The part of me wants to go back through and mark each character, like color code tabs on it, and just read through each character's full story,
Right.
That way. Yeah. Because I kept going back and forth, like, okay, now which boat am I on now?
It's kind of hard to keep up with. I thought
Yeah.
when I first opened the book, it was like just in your face, like people were being ripped out of this house. I was like, okay, we're not even gonna ease into it. We're just gonna, yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I was thinking too, like, man, because I read it just, from page to page, but then afterwards, once I finished, I was like, man, I wonder if I should have read it, by character, just to get that full story first. And then, like read all of Joseph's and then all of Isabel's and then all of what was his name? Mahmoud?
Yes,
I can't remember his name now. Yeah, Mahmoud. Because I was sometimes getting lost. So I was like, wait, what is Joseph going through now again? And then I'd be like, oh wait, is that Isabel? Are they doing it? Wait, what? So I kept like getting the stories confused and I had to like go back and try to remember what was happening. But it all connected at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
thought was how they kind of connected at the end and you were able to
I had a feeling. I was like, I bet you that somehow, not Isabella's story, but somehow Joseph's and Mahmoud's stories connected in some way because they were going in the same, I guess their storylines were the same in terms of like, see, now I'm getting confused because Mahmoud was going from Syria to Germany, but then Joseph's story was going from Germany to Cuba, right? Germany to yeah. So I was like, okay, so there's something's gonna be related in some point in time. Something was gonna happen. So yeah, when the end happened, I was like, oh, I can't believe it. I was right. But I was very happy that, how it was able to connect with Ruthie.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a great end and great part of the book.
Yeah, if I were to have my students read this, they would definitely have to have a character analysis going the whole time they're reading.
Yeah.
So like, right, Joseph, Where is he starting off at? What year is it? Who else is involved in
Yeah.
his circle? And then, track his journey, and then being able to make their connections as they're reading. Because I definitely need to go back through here and read it again, because I was really just caught up in the story, and so I wasn't reading it to overanalyze it. I
Mhm.
was really reading it for entertainment.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like I need to
Same.
get out, like some notes or something, and
Yeah, I feel like this story would need a lot of teacher involvement with
Mhm.
it, so that the students could really understand and grasp the content and the storyline and what was happening. Because if I was getting lost and trying to connect it, then it's
Right.
definitely,
Really imagine.
the kids are gonna be like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I really wanted Hannah to be found, because Hannah was not found, right?
No,
No.
no, not from my understanding. No, she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like the story was, like age appropriate in terms of probably like for middle school
Mhm.
students.
Yeah.
And I felt like it wasn't too like graphic in any
Graphic.
way.
Yeah.
I felt like it was kind of like we talked about, a really kind of authentic experience for them to really understand, how each of those characters dealt with war and dealt with, um, you know, bias and things like that.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed it a lot, the story.
Yes. Kept trying to, it seemed like I kept trying to do a map in my head, with Joseph leaving Germany to go to Cuba, right? That's what we said.
Mhm.
And then we have Isabel that's leaving Cuba, and she's trying to get to Florida, right? If she's trying to get to Florida,
Miami. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then we have
Mm-hmm.
Mood, who's trying to leave Syria. Where was he going?
To Germany.
Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know at the end of my book, I don't know if y'all's had it, but it gave a map of
yes,
their routes. And so it made it kind of, I had to like go back and I was like, okay, so this is how like their whole journey of that whole, we don't think it really happened in that way, I guess, when you're
yeah,
reading it. But when I saw the map, I was like, wow, they like, I don't remember whose it was. I think it was Joseph's. Um, all that traveling they did just to come
right.
all the way back,
Yes.
basically to where they had started.
Yep.
Yeah.
Isabel. Yep. Yep. Remember Isabel, they showed up to Bahamas, and Bahamas was like, nope.
Nope, gotta go. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And then Mahmoud ended up in Germany. Yeah. That was just crazy how times kept changing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a whole deeper understanding of not just a culture, but religion and acceptance and not accepting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I thought it was neat that when they were trying to name the little boat that they had put together, they had thrown out the name St. Louis, but then they kind of brushed over it, and then you find out that the ship that Joseph was on, or
Yes, I think that's where I started to feel okay. Somehow these are all these three stories are going to be connected because he threw out the word St. Louis and he kept saying, the Spanish word for tomorrow.
manana, manana,
Yeah, he
manana.
kept saying, he kept saying that, and I was like, okay, wait, all of these stories are about to be connected in some way
Yes.
or form.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So was
Go ahead.
because Mignot, the story about the one that they kept saying tomorrow, that was Mahmoud's story. And then, but the St. Louis was Joseph's story. So was the grandfather like any way connected then to
yes.
Joseph's?
So on Joseph, when he was on the ship, and then there was the guards from Cuba, right?
Mm-hmm.
One that, yeah, because his dad had jumped over, and so he was trying to find out what was going on with his dad and to get him on there, and they wouldn't let him go. One of those guys
The
is,
officers
yeah, one of the officers is the grandfather.
is the grandfather. Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay. That makes sense.
because I remember on the boat, when they were like looking at Miami, and he said, this is what I remember, and he was like, it's my time to do the right thing, and that's when he jumped in to
Yeah, to save them. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, this is all making sense now.
right, you gotta kind of think about it. Let it sit
Yeah.
there. So I'm gonna look up some discussion. What should that be? Just to see.
I thought it was so sad how Isabel's friend ended so
I was not
abruptly.
yeah, I was not expecting that.
No, I was like, you were just laughing and now you're gone.
Yeah. I was not expecting that to happen at all.
Or the Mahmoud's family, when they were in the taxi and he stopped in the middle of nowhere at gunpoint and
And
asked
pulled
for
the
money and put him out. I was like,
yeah. I felt like something was gonna happen because I was like, it's going too smoothly. So where all these people are just willing to pick them up and take them to the border and
Yeah.
with
mhm.
no issues yet. So I knew something was coming with that one. But the whole thing about the sharks and is it Yvonne? Yvonne? I was like, yeah, no, was not expecting that one.
All right, so this discussion question says, why do you think the author chose to tell these 3 stories in alternating chapters? What is the effect on the reader of moving back and forth between the stories from different periods of history?
Think for me, it kept me alert because I had to make sure I was paying attention to what was changing with the stories. And then it got you thinking and creating your own plot on what was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really have to pay attention in great detail
Yes.
in order to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it wouldn't have had the same effect if it was just 3 separate stories. Joseph's was all one story you read first. Part 2 was Mahmoud's or Isabel's.
Mm-hmm.
And then part 3 was Mahmoud's. I felt like it wouldn't have that, like you said, the same effect because it kept you on your toes and you really had to keep thinking and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together to make sense of, okay, why are they telling 3 different perspectives, 3 different stories? How do they all 3 relate in some
Yes.
way?
Especially with the
Yeah.
time difference between them.
The
'cause we had
time, yeah,
1939, 1994, and 2015. Is that what it was?
yeah.
38. Okay. 38, 94, and 15. So it's like 56 years, and
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
I'm slow on my math today. 21 years between stories.
Okay, let's do this. Discuss the ways you could help children that have been affected by a refugee experience become acclimated to a different country with different customs. So if you had a child within your classroom that was affected by a refugee experience, how could you help them become acclimated to a different country with different customs? Well, we could start by literature.
There you go.
Right?
Yes.
Having the
Yeah.
correct, I mean, we kind of, I don't know, it's kind of far-fetched for me, like I don't feel like that would, not that it would ever happen, but I don't know.
And I mean, I guess for you guys, it's if, has the student did they start school in their home country? There's a fly. Is it going through classroom expectations? If they were maybe allowed to just get up and go to the bathroom,
Right.
like, nope, here we have to raise our hand. We can't just walk out because, we have, of course, you wouldn't say this to them, but we have bad people out there that sometimes get into the school. So we have to know where you're at. You wouldn't say all that, but, that would be something. I think about students that I have that, have been in America for maybe 1 to 2 years, but I don't know that right away, and then you hear them say, well, why do Americans do this? And I'm like, what do you mean? Where are you from? Like, how long have you been here? And they're like, oh, this is my 2nd year. And I'm like, okay, that actually explains some things. And so then you're able to, really address it and then get perspectives from, what would you have done in your home country, and how do you think about that here? And then, but not single them out, everybody else is able to engage in that conversation. But I can't say I've not had anybody that was a refugee.
Yeah.
It was just parents divorced and mom moved to the States,
Right.
Yeah, same. Like I know in the upper grades for us, we've had, people like come from, a different country, not speaking English at all, and they're just submerged into, the classroom. But that happens more in like the upper grades, than it does for us in the 1st grade. But I think as teachers, I think it's very important that we do like build a classroom of community, and that everyone feels welcome. So like really, at the beginning of the year, that time period when we're getting to know each other, getting to know our stories, where are we from? I think that would be very valuable to make sure we do. And even if they came like middle of the year, even though they missed out the first, when we did do that activity with the whole class, having them do that. So that way it gives us information about who the student is, where they came from, but then also, we're able to better provide for them and relate, situations that they may not be familiar with. So
and even holidays,
yeah,
some people don't celebrate birthdays, they don't do Christmas. So just making, it's a welcoming space still, that they aren't, going to be sabotaged all Christmas long with Santas and elves and, and they're like, this is so uncomfortable,
Right. I've had some parents in my class, not necessarily in my classroom, but in classrooms that, on my hallway, and like they wouldn't allow their child to dress up for Halloween.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't, because there's some kids that don't dress up for Halloween and they still celebrate, they just don't go to school. So it wasn't like they were the only ones, but their parents would be like, hey, like, we don't celebrate this holiday. We don't believe in that. Please don't allow him to dress up.
Yeah.
Which is just totally fine.
Yes. Yeah.
Totally fine. Okay. So
and look at next week.
Yeah, let's look at next week. So we go.
Why are you stuck? No.
I feel like next week's is going to be interesting. Chapter 8, prejudice, bullying, abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for all that noise.
I feel like that's a lot more relatable to our students currently, versus this, previous chapter. Not so much, like you said, it could happen. And it's good that we're aware and what we should do if that happens. But like chapter 8 definitely feels like relatable to current time.
I agree.
Yes.
So I'm excited to read what that one's about.
And what's the novel for next week?
And then Red Glass, right?
Yeah. I
just got mine in. Okay. Yeah. Is it like normal chapter book? Lots of words?
Yes. Yeah. No pictures.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Yeah, 275 pages. It does have some questions in the back.
Okay. There we go. Some guiding questions.
Yes. I guess we can, okay. The back of the book. Even before the boy appeared, I thought about the people crossing the desert. I imagined how scrub brush scratched their legs as they walked at night, how the sun dried out their eyes during the day, how their hearts pounded when they threw their bodies to the ground, hiding from the La Migra. I imagined them pressing their cheeks against the dust, thinking about how thinking about the happy life they would have if only they reached the end of this desert. So I guess that's an excerpt and a summary. One night, Sophie, her mother, and her stepfather are called to the hospital where Pablo, a 6-year-old Mexican boy, is recovering from dehydration. Pablo was carrying the business card of Sophie's stepfather, but he doesn't recognize the boy. Crossing the border into Arizona with 7 other Mexicans and a coyote or guide, Pablo and his parents face such harsh conditions that the boy is the only survivor. Pablo comes to live with Sophie, her parents, and Sophie's aunt, Dika, a refugee from the war in Bosnia. Sophie loves Pablo, her Principito, or little prince, but after a year, Sophie's parents are able to contact Pablo's extended family in Mexico, and Sophie, Dika, and Dika's new boyfriend and his son must travel with Pablo to his hometown so that he can make a heart-wrenching decision. Okay.
Hi,
Right. Okay. All right, so we want to plan on doing Saturday, next Saturday?
That's
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Yeah, let me.
Okay, we'll shoot for 2, but of course, if that needs to change for anybody, just let us know. Yeah, how's Knox?
Okay.
He's good.
He's
He,
good.
he took a lot more milk last night at the NICU, so I just hope he keeps it up. It's his thing. He's got to eat. He's a big boy. He was 8 pounds when he was born.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
wow.
So being that he's a big boy, they want him to eat like he's a big boy. And
Yeah.
so,
He's about having to eat too much, I feel like.
yeah, my husband thinks too much, but
Yes. Yeah, they don't want the birth weight to drop,
yeah, too significantly. So
Yes, but he's starting off good then.
yes, he's gonna get there. He'll be home before we know it.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm so happy for you both.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. I was like, why am I crying? Is that so great?
No. Alrighty, I will get this typed up and I will turn it in for all of us. And I'll see you guys next week.
Okay. Y'all
All
have a
right.
good
Bye,
day.
y'all.
Bye.